Now, Kenya is not the only country affected by flooding. Across East Africa, storms have left a trail of death and destruction in their wake. In Rwanda, landslides have killed at least 200 people this year alone, while in Tanzania, schools were forced to close for several days. Hundreds of thousands of people across the region are now homeless.
Rains have been falling in East Africa for the last 1 month. Kenya and Rwanda seem to be the hardest hit, with the death toll now clocking 300. An estimated 20,000 animals have also been killed and over 200,000 people displaced. And the number might rise from the latest tragedy in Nakuru, Kenya. Many have been displaced and lost livelihoods as water levels continues to rise. Meteorologists say the rains may continue until the end of May. In Tanzania, things are not different. 9 people have reported to have died in April floods in commercial capital Dar es Salaam. The government has ordered schools to close for several days as a result of flooding. Rwanda too has also been hit. The country's spokesman for the Ministry of Disaster Management, Jean-Claude Twashime, says 18 people have been killed in landslides. Several others are still missing. The western districts of Karongi and Rubavu are the worst hit. As the weathermen predict a continuation of rains in the region, more cases are expected. Infrastructure like roads and schools have also been most affected. But the true extent of the damage will be known after the end of the floods. Sadiq Shaban, CGTN.
And let's get you more perspective now on the flooding in East Africa. I'm joined in studio by Samuel Mwangi. He's the Deputy Director of the Kenya Meteorological Department here in Kenya. Thank you, Samuel, for joining us on Africa Live. Now, we do understand that about 150 people may have lost their lives in the current flooding and heavy rains that are pounding across parts of Kenya. It does seem, though, that Kenya as a country is unable to cope with this. Why is that?
Well, let's start by saying that no single country in the world is 100% able to cope with natural disasters. But what we can do is reduce the magnitude of damage, the losses of life, and the destruction of the infrastructure. We do this by many initiatives, including catchment protection, where you rehabilitate your water catchment areas such that you reduce the magnitude and the intensity of floods. The other things you do is ensure that you construct your infrastructure with the basic information about meteorological indicators. Like you don't put up a very small dam in an area that receives a lot of rainfall, because this dam will almost always be overtopped by water. The other things you do is ensure that even planning of habitation, where you put up your settlement and things like that, you take into consideration the natural water flows, such that you don't put a lot of population downstream of dangerous infrastructure. So these are some of the things you can take into consideration as you plan.
Because you have talked about some of the things that need to be put into consideration to ensure that the constant flooding does not cause havoc to the populations, though. But in terms of the people themselves who are living in these areas that you're talking about, catchment areas, we saw heavy flooding in Tana River, for instance, and now we've witnessed what's happening in Nakuru. What can the people do, though?
Basically, it's let's call it a tripartite arrangement, where you have personal responsibility as a person, then you have the government, the central government, the county government, all coming together to be able to sort out some of these problems. On the part of the county government, there are things they can do at the county level to ensure that one thing, avoid this kind of thing. Then the national government, of course, has a responsibility, like when you talk of the Tana River. Much of this water comes from way up in the upper Tana catchment, the central Kenya, Mount Kenya, Aberdares, and this water flows all the way down and causes havoc as it approaches the Indian Ocean. So this kind of information system, the monitoring systems that need to be taken into consideration to be able to warn people, one, in good time, make evacuation plans, kind of standard operating procedures, where when a warning is given, then the people clearly know what to do. They know which high evacuation centers, the paths they can use to avoid danger and all that. These need to be put in place so that we save on life and we avoid a lot of damage to...
But this hasn't been restricted to Kenya alone. Across East Africa, though, we have seen a lot of flooding, a lot of displacement across the region. We also saw in 2007, there was a lot of drought. The region suffered from massive drought. This year, it is the flooding. So what do we do?
Basically, it's an integrated system because we don't tackle just one phenomena. You could say that a drought is the other side of the coin. We have floods now, but we need an integrated disaster management system which looks at not just natural disasters, but even man-made disasters. Like the issue of Nakuru, that would be a man-made kind of disaster where you are talking of a failure of a structure. There are the natural disasters like the floods we are seeing, the droughts, those are natural, but we need an integrated system that looks at all factors that contribute to these disasters. And droughts and floods will always be there, but they don't have to be disasters. Remember, there are places in the country, in the world where there's hardly any rainfall. There are still people living there. They don't even suffer famine because they make arrangements for access to food from other parts of the world. So we need to put in place mechanisms to be able to, in a holistic manner, handle disasters. Be they man-made, be they natural, be they hydrological, be they meteorological.
Right.
All of them, we need to have concerted efforts to integrate mechanisms for dealing with them. And then we can be able to cope with anything that nature throws at us.
All right, and that is to coping. Samuel Mwangi, thank you very much for your insights into the situations in East Africa.